welcome to our 12 days of Christmas. Today it's day 1 and we're making this card. Here are the supplies you'll need to do this card. You'll need a scoreboard with a scoring tool, a paper trimmer, and if you don't have a scoreboard you can use your paper trimmer with a stylus to score your card in half, your favorite adhesive, you'll need a heat tool, a snowflake punch, here I'm using a Martha Stewart punch, and a 1.5 circle punch. You'll need a catch-all tray as well as Versamark ink, and an embossing powder that is clear with glitter in it. Here I'm using the holographic embossing powder by Ranger, a holiday sentiment, as well as the Tim Holtz distress ink in Stormy Sky, and a pair of scissors. You'll be needing a 4¼ by 11 inch piece of white cardstock, as well as a 2.5 by 5.5 inch scrap piece of white cardstock, and a small piece of pattern paper that measures 2 by 4¼ Here I'm using the Winter Wishful paper from the Twig collection by My Little Yellow Bicycle. You'll also need a 14-inch piece of white ribbon. You could use satin, taffeta, silk, or even seam binding. And 3 rhinestones. Now let's get started. The first step you'll need to do is to cut your papers, obviously, and then you're going to take your piece of 4¼ by 8.5 inches white cardstock, and using your scoreboard or your paper trimmer, you'll score it down in the middle at 5.5 inch on the long end and fold in half. Crease it with your bone folder and put it aside. So I'm using my piece of 2.5 by 5 cardstock, and I'm going to lay it over a piece of scrap paper because I don't want to dirty my mat. And using my Versamark ink, I'm going to get a very good coverage on the white cardstock. Then over my catch-all tray, I'm going to spread the embossing powder all over my piece of cardstock. Check off the excess, and I'll put my tray aside to empty out later. The next step is to heat emboss this piece of cardstock. One word of caution, never do it over a cutting mat because then you'll warp your cutting mat and it will never go back to normal. So I'm just going to put this on my work surface, which is wood and safe, and using my tool I'm going to heat set this. I just wanted to pause here because I get asked this question a lot. I just wanted to show you what the difference is between an embossing powder that is properly melted and one that is not. If you can see here, the shine is a little bit different, and it's really difficult to see when you're doing a piece of white cardstock because it's white on white or clear on white. The big difference is that when you're doing it, you'll see these crystals melting and kind of like moving, and that's a good indication that it is embossed properly. As you can see here on this side, it kind of looks matte, and that side is not ready, so we need to heat set that side. So now we have this beautiful piece of shimmery cardstock, and we'll start by punching our snowflakes. We need 3 snowflakes, and you need to space them out so that there is room for the circle punch to go through in between them. So I'm going to start one here off the edge here. And our third one here. Don't forget to keep these because they're really beautiful, so you can use them on another project. So now that I've punched my 3 snowflakes, I want to take my 1.5 circle punch and center my snowflake like so in my circle and punch. And this makes our first punch out. I'm going to repeat the same thing for the other 2 snowflakes. So now we're going to bring back our piece of cardstock that we folded in half. This is our card base. And we want to adhere the piece of designer paper over your cardstock base. And I love using my cutting mat to measure exactly where I'm going to be gluing my pieces on my project. So now that I've lined up this edge here at the 8-inch mark, I want to glue this piece down 1.25 inches from the bottom edge. And I will do so by calculating. So an 1.25 inches is right here. And I can line it up at the 1.25 inch mark on the other side of my card, and that way I know that my piece of pattern paper is very straight. Now I usually cut my pieces of overlay pattern paper a tiny bit longer. That's because I like to have a very flush edge. So when I do this, I just turn over my piece of cardstock and I just trim the excess, and that way I have a perfectly straight edge here. Before we go any further, we need to stamp our sentiment. So I will be bringing in my Stormy Sky ink and my sentiment. Ink it up. And again, using my grid on my mat, I want to stamp my sentiment about, I would say 1/4 inch from my pattern paper and just about centered. Give it a good press, and there we go. Now that we've got our sentiment in place, it's time to work on our snowflakes. And I'm going to just marking my line up here. The one in the middle overlaps a little bit the side ones. So I'm just going to align them in the middle of my pattern paper here. And I'll be using my small adhesive, foam adhesive squares. And as you can see, mine are quite big, so I usually cut them in half. And starting from the side here, I'm going to adhere my first snowflake. So now I've just adhered the last one down, and now it's time to put the rhinestones in. And I like to use my quick stick by Quick Cut to do this. I just take the end off of the pen and I use my scraper like this to dislodge it, and then the sticky end to pick it back up. And I'll glue down the first rhinestone right down in the middle, in the center of my snowflake. And there we go. One last step, we need to tie the ribbon around the card at the bottom here. And here's another trick for you. When you're tying a knot on your ribbon, you start by making a cross like this, then looping the right end underneath, making a cross again, or a plus sign. You put your finger there, and it's bottom over top, and then through the loop. And as I pass my ribbon through the loop, I change this finger for this one, and I hold the right ribbon in place and pull with the left, and that way the knot goes right underneath the beautiful flat top here. So it's very easy to do once you know how to do it. And then I'm just going to trim my ends. I like to have short tails when I have a very small ribbon. I'm just going to move my knot on the side here, and we're done. Very simple. You could also round out the corners if you wish. It's a very fun project, very fun card, very simple, very modern in look. And I hope you make a few of these for Christmas, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 2. Bye!